Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Clark Ebert. I am the Director of Conference Education Programming at the National Apartment Association, and I'm hosting the webinar today. This webinar is part of our continuing effort to bring valuable information to independent rental owners. And we're rebroadcasting some information that we shared earlier at Apartmentalize 2018. In San Diego. Mark, I'm gonna, I need to screen share for you. So let me get that going. I appreciate you taking the time today, Mark, to share your information with us.
Absolutely.
Let's see, we're going to share the screen. Sorry for all the technical difficulties, everybody. There we go. Can you guys see the PowerPoint presentation? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, Mark, I'm going to go ahead and advance the slides for you. As you go, I'll just be here to support you as you go along. So maybe start by introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm Mark O'Cleary. I'm Director of Operations of Highland Commercial Properties. I'm Irish. I'm from Ireland. I moved to the US 7 years ago, and my bachelor's degree is in software engineering, and working in the rental housing industry for as many years as I have, and coming from a background from a technology background, I was very interested in the growing threat of data theft. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. Will I press on, Clark? Yeah. What is this? You know, the title of the webinar was data security. Also another popular term that's being passed around is cybersecurity, which is kind of, to me, sounds like a bit of a 90s term. You know, the modern term for this is data security. If you could go to the next slide there, please, Clark. So what is it really about? Well, this is really about protecting your residents' data and protecting your data. That's what we're here for today. I'll go through different ways you can see what kind of attacks you're under threat from, and then also what you can do, simple things you can do starting today to protect yourself from those attacks. And I'll also go through what kind of data are we talking about? What is the at-risk data and what's not at risk? Next slide, please, Clark. Thank you. So information on data theft in the rental housing industry is kind of hard to come by. I feel like our industry has gone under the radar a little bit. It's easier to find data on hotel data thefts. Just this year, there's been a number of really high, you know, really well-known data thefts in the hotel industry. Just recently, you may have seen in the papers, in the news, Marriott International had over 500 million guests affected. Most of that data theft was phone numbers, addresses, this kind of thing, but over 100 million of them were credit cards and really, you know, financial information, really sensitive financial information. So you've got to believe that the hackers are out there putting this information to work right now, putting it to make a profit for them. That hotel chain had been hacked as far back as 2014, and it had gone undetected for 4 years. This is really scary when you think about our computer systems, our third-party vendors that we use and the data we store there. You know, other hotel groups have been affected as well. Radisson Hotel Group, Hilton Hotel Group. Hilton got fined for mishandling the data breach. And that means just not for the data breach itself, but for not reporting it when they should have, and not discovering it, not dealing with it, you know, in a timely manner. So we'll go over some of reporting and requirements as well in this webinar. What do you do if you do discover you've been hacked? Next slide, please. Thanks. So just throw a few statistics at you. We all love statistics. In 2016, you know, the data is a bit old in some of these cases, but there was almost 300,000 complaints in 2016, representing 1.3 billion in losses, estimate, of course. Now, that's only 10 to 12% of all victims in the United States, because how many people are actually reporting when they feel they've been hacked? Very few. The FBI is estimating 10 to 12%. Cases of ransomware jumped 6,000%. That's a number from 2016 as well, but you can see that it's just rising, the cases of ransomware. We're going to go through all the different types of these things. So if you're not sure what ransomware is, we'll be getting into that very shortly. Identity theft, they estimate, generated 107 billion in losses between 2011 and 2017. And we all know, you know, we've heard of this on the radio and the news. If you haven't experienced it yourself, identity theft can make a very real and difficult impact on people's lives. The last thing we want is for it to happen to our residents. So the types of attacks we're going to be looking at today: phishing, email phishing, watering hole phishing, spear phishing. If these sound fantastical names to you, you know, the names are funny, but the acts are not funny. Ransomware, DDoS, that's denial of service. That's one of the biggest ones that's going on. Trojans, viruses, worms, what have you. Scareware, and we're going to get into each one of these so you'll know what they mean. Clickjacking, keyloggers, and what do they do with those? Well, they're not just hacks. They lead to extortion, information theft, bank theft. They'll go straight for the money. Hobby hacking, which is a big portion of what hackings are out there. Coin mining, now at the rise of Bitcoin and blockchain technology, they'll use your computer to mine Bitcoins, which is basically a way of saying that they're just using your computer resources and your electric bill to make them money. Political hacktivism, another big thing, you know, no particular financial gain in the end, just it's a political thing. And then black hat, white hat hacking. White hat hacking basically means that they're doing it for what they think is the benefit of society. For example, Google has a bounty system out, and in 2018 they paid almost 3 million in bounties to white hat hackers, which is to say that if you try to hack any Google product and you find a vulnerability and you report it to them, they will give you a bounty, because they're trying to proactively find these issues before they get hacked. So we've got a polling question here. I'd love to see in the comments section, if you want to open the comments there and leave a comment. Have you ever heard of a ransomware attack happen to someone you know personally? So, you know, we'll do that really quickly, but, you know, 1, you've never heard of it happening. 2, I've heard it happen, but I don't know who. 3, I know someone it happened to. Or 4, it happened to me. I'd be curious to see what the comments are like on that, and we'll come back to that in a while. Clark, are we able to see the comments right now as we're going? I think.
Q&A. Here we
Tell
go.
you what, oh, I see some responses already.
So I see Mackenzie Baker says 3. Brian Downer says, yes, I know someone who had a ransomware attack on their business.
Yeah. So it's a hugely rising, worrying trend, and people don't want to report it because it's embarrassing that it happens. But as I've done this webinar, as I've done this talk, I come across more and more people it's happened to them. Hopefully, if you're watching this webinar, we're going to show you really practical things you can do to make sure it doesn't happen to you. So we'll just jump right into the different types of hacks now. We're talking about phishing. What is phishing? In simple terms, I'll give you an example. So I received an email the other day saying your bank account may have been hacked. Please click here and log in. So what most people want to do is they trust this email. It looks like it's coming from their bank. So they click on the link in the email and they go ahead and put in their username and password for their bank account. and then they go through and it looks strange and they don't know what's going on, so they leave it. What they have just done unknowingly is they've just given their password and their username and their password to a hacker. So phishing is basically sending you phony emails, usually emails, asking you to put in your username and password so that you just it's like handing the keys to your car over to them. There's an excellent joke in The Simpsons where someone comes up to Homer, I think, and says, "Oh, the wallet inspector, please show me your wallet." And he promptly takes out his wallet and gives it to the wallet inspector. So the way you protect against this is don't trust anything you receive via email. Look very carefully at it. And most importantly, you will never be asked by any reputable website or bank or financial institution or software to put in your username and password via email. So just make a habit that if you get an email asking for your username and password, you just say no. We'll move on to the next one there, please. So spearfishing, what's the difference? So phishing, I could set up a program that will send out 100,000 emails today asking everybody and their grandmother to put in their username and password into my thing because of something bad's going to happen if they don't. That's phishing. Spearfishing is where I target certain people. I get the names I get the name of the general manager of a bank, let's say, whoever it might be. I get the name of a senator in the United States, and I send him an email, and him or her an email, and I say, I target them using their name. So it's like phishing, but it's aimed at one high value individual for my purposes. And I even seed it with some information I might get off their Facebook, make it seem like it's from their friend, saying, "Oh, hey, there was an article about you," or "Hey, I saw this thing that you'd be interested in. Just log in with your Gmail and you'll see it." So it's very effective. And a lot of the big hacks that have happened in the last, 15 years have come via spearfishing individuals. So this is of particular interest if you're the manager of a property, if you're the regional manager, if you're the supervisor, if you're an IRO owner of a property, they would want to target you specifically. And so you'll have to very much watch out, even if it seems like it's coming from a friend or a family member. So ransomware is obviously a huge threat. A lot of this is going on every day. Ransomware is just where they will install a virus on your computer that will lock your computer, and you will have to pay them back. You'll have to pay them to unlock it. Now, they choose Bitcoin because it's untraceable practically as one of their payment methods. So you'll have to go buy Bitcoins, and they'll give you a very short time limit, and they'll threaten your data. And a lot of time, even when you do pay them, they'll still keep your data locked and ransom you for more money or delete your data, or they really don't care. It depends on the operation. So what we're talking about today will show you how to avoid getting these viruses on your computer. Onto DDoS. Now, this is a complicated picture, but this is one of the biggest extortion rackets going on in the world right now. I'll try to make this really simple. Okay, so what we've got in the top left is the attacker. This is the hacker, right? And then going through a controller to zombies. What are zombies? Well, a zombie is your computer in your leasing office, your computer on your desk in your office. If you come and sit down at your computer one day and it's going slow, and for some reason that day it's just started to slow down, and over the course of the week you might call out the computer repair guy or not, and you have him do it, and he finds a virus on there, and you weren't getting ransomed, there was just some virus slowing down your computer. Well, it's pretty darn likely that your computer was being used as a zombie or a bot in a network of up to tens or hundreds of thousands of such computers. And they leverage these computers to all try to log into some company's website at the same time. So imagine you're a shoe company selling shoes online, and you get called by Russian hackers, and they say, or emailed or communicated with, they say, if you don't pay our ransom of $20,000, we are going to have 100,000 computers log into your website 100 times a second, crashing your servers and preventing you from doing any business. And imagine this as our, our management company software as well. You can't get into your accounts, you can't get into your management company software because they're being blackmailed by hackers who have created a botnet or a zombie army, and all because you sit down at your computer one day and it's kind of slow. And this is one of the most common types of reasons for your computer being slow, is that it's being used for these purposes. So Trojans, viruses, worms, they each have their different flavor and their different way that they infect your computer. But the one, what you can take to heart is that you have to invite them in. Almost always you have to invite these things in. You have to invite them in by clicking on something in an email that wasn't from who you thought it was. You have to invite it in by accidentally clicking on a download button that was the wrong download button. So if you learn to be careful and you train your staff to be careful of what they're clicking on, 99% of the time or 100% of the time, you will not download the Trojan, you will not let the Trojan in, you will not let the virus or worm get on your computer, and you will prevent this from happening. Scareware. So scareware is how the Trojan, how the virus worm gets onto your computer. This is one of the most common ways, I would say the most common ways that it tricks someone into downloading it. So here we say you go to a website, or one of your staff goes to a website, and they innocently enough go to the wrong website, or they go to a right website which has been hijacked, and up pops this and it says, virus found, your Mac computer has 13 infections, or your Windows computer or whatever. Please call tech support as soon as possible. Your computer is at a very high risk. Your financial and personal information is not secure. So this is scaring people. It creates a time crunch, it creates a panic, and a lot of people, and it only takes one person to let the virus in, are going to click OK, they're going to click whatever. Maybe they'll even call the number. And this is going to start the chain of events which leads to the virus getting onto the computer. So one way to be sure that you should not click something is if it's trying to scare you or intimidate you. Nothing legitimate on the internet is going to start a countdown or is going to scare you into calling a number. So if you ever find yourself on a website that's telling you it's found viruses and making you worried, don't click anything. Take your hands off the mouse, step back, and call someone. Clickjacking. Clickjacking is where they basically hide one thing over another. So they'll hide a button, like a download button, over a confirmation button, and trying to spoof you into clicking something you didn't expect. And keyloggers. Keyloggers are a physical threat. So in this case, it could be a USB you picked up from somewhere or were given by someone. You have to plug it in. Could be someone coming into your office and plugging one into one of your computers physically. And anything, usually they plug it in between the keyboard and the computer, and then it picks up anything that gets typed in. So the more sophisticated ones will then connect to your internet and send that data off to someone. And obviously, if you're typing in usernames and passwords, they will collect all of that information. Okay, so Sun Tzu's famous book, The Art of War, Know Your Enemy. Let's see what hackers are about, what they want. So what motivates a hacker? Surprisingly enough, the number one thing is fun, thrill. That's how most of them get their start. There's a lot of young people doing it. It's not incredibly difficult. 29% of them have convinced themselves they're doing it as part of a moral compass. Whatever their political leanings are has made them think that this is okay. We've got 19% financial gain and 1% notoriety, the sociopath who wants to make a name. So not a tremendous amount of it is about financial gain, but those who do turn it to those uses can and do extract a lot of money from their victims. So there was a poll done this year. Do you believe that you will ever face repercussions for your hacking activities? Most of them said no. And I would say that most of them are correct in that assessment, unfortunately, unless we start getting better at protecting ourselves. So here, let's take a look at a couple of hackers who have been caught. So Roman Seleznov, hacking US businesses and banks for credit cards and personal information, made many millions before he was caught. On the right-hand side, that's an English young man who at the age of 18 set up a software package that was DDoS for hire. So he was allowing hackers to, he's allowing anyone for $160 a week. You could hire his DDoS service to take down any website. Here's from the FBI's most wanted hackers. There's the lineup. If we go to the next page, we won't read into each one of these, but I'll give you the highlights. The first guy, Evgeny Mikhailov Bogachev, 3 million reward, who was the mastermind behind a botnet that infected up to 1 million computers. More than 1 million computers, 100 million losses since 2009. He was also responsible for a lot of crypto locker ransomware. So just this guy was one of the main ransomware extorters. Our second guy, 1 million reward by the FBI. And he was scamming on eBay and things like that. So as we go down, we see that these guys were making a lot of money. You know, we can go to the next slide. I don't want to read all of these, but they're scary enough. If you go to the next one as well, please. Thank you. So bottom left, flashing the cash, Erkan Fundikoglu, a Turkish ATM scammer. He would put viruses on ATM machines and scam from them. The guy in the middle was part of a ransomware ring. He seems to be the fall guy. There was a network of 100 people working in a warehouse operation. He was the one who got caught. On the right-hand side, Canadian Karim Beretov. He hacked Yahoo for no personal reasons other than being a hacktivist and making a name for himself, which is why he took these photos as he did. Next slide, please. Here's another guy. I thought he was very cool. Incursio was a member of a hacking group, Crackers with Attitude, who would cost millions in losses to businesses just to prove points and to gain kudos online. So we can see the top 10 identity theft states. So victims per 100,000 people. So it's going on constantly, and major population centers seem to be where it's focused, of course. We go, next slide, please. So now we get into the what do we do about it section of this webinar. And number one thing, when I look at what is going to really protect your business, is not paying some data security service. It's not getting some fancy password management system, because the real security starts with educating yourself and your employees. It doesn't matter if you have a third-party security management company if you're suffering phishing attacks and you fall for it. You know, so educating yourself and your employees, having a data security policy, by which I mean a written policy that all staff would be signing and reading, having annual or biannual staff training to remind them of the dangers, having a response plan in case you have been hacked. What do you do in that? So having a written plan, and then knowing the reporting requirements in case of a breach, so that you don't get the kind of fine that Hilton got. So the categories of data we're dealing with, we've got the public data, internal data, confidential data, and restricted data. So restricted and confidential are mostly where we want to focus on having our highest level of care. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see restricted data. Okay, this is also known as personally identifying information, or PII. Super sensitive. Notice triggering, by which we mean that if this information is lost, is stolen, then we will, by most state laws, need to notify the people that the data has been taken. Leaks of this kind can lead to identity theft. It can lead to news coverage and publicity and reputation damage, as well as damaging your residents' financial security. We're talking about social security numbers, driver's licenses, ID numbers, bank account numbers, credit card numbers, personal medical insurance information, and passwords. This requires our highest level of care. So you've got to really think, you know, and this is why we can't just pay a third-party company to do this for us, or at least not without huge expense, you know. But if we sit down and think, social security numbers, how are they passed through your company? When are they, is a picture ever taken of them? Are they scanned? Are they saved on a computer? Are they typed in? Is it stored securely? If it's just stored on the hard drive of one of your Windows computers that's acting slow, well, it's sitting there for anybody to take. Is it sent securely? If you're just sending it over email, if your email gets compromised, well then so is the data. If we go on to confidential data. So confidential, moderately sensitive information, it needs protecting. It doesn't require a notice if it's stolen, legally speaking. We're talking home addresses, phone numbers, birth dates, genders, religious or sexual orientations, other personal information, financial information internally. So this information is confidential. It's not the most high order personally identifying information, but it's still important. So as part of the Marriott theft, most of what was stolen was confidential data. And then we have non-confidential or public data, the lowest levels. You know, this is stuff that you might have shared otherwise, or might be slightly sensitive you'd prefer not to share. So what's the point of having these three categories? Well, just to start thinking in your business, you deal with, and what category would you put it in? And then treating those things differently. Okay, so we have a lot of information here, but basically, have a data security policy. A written policy is a good idea, especially in this day and age going forward, going into 2019. You might start thinking of getting that data security policy, knowing what it is. Train your staff on common scams. This is something really simple that you can do today and make a huge difference to your vulnerability. Using the cloud. So people, I think a lot of the public perception is that the cloud is not secure. But the reality is the cloud is a lot more secure than your private computer in your home. Because anyone can access your private computer in your home with virtually no problems. Whether you have a firewall, whether it's password protected, you're still very vulnerable. Whereas companies like Google and Microsoft invest massive amounts in their security. So while you may hear of high-profile companies in the cloud getting hacked, it actually happens a lot less than people's personal computers. That is the number one way that people lose information. So I liken it to, if you go back a couple hundred years, people keeping money in their mattress versus keeping it in a bank. Banks can still be robbed, but you're much safer keeping your money in a bank than in your mattress. And so if you can shift information to the cloud, that is definitely the thing to do to keep it more secure. We have had a lot of success in our company switching over to cloud-based laptops like Chromebooks, where almost no information is kept on the laptop itself, because the operating system is based in the cloud. So if someone steals that computer or someone hacks into that computer, they still have another level of security to go through to get to the data. Managing your passwords, we'll talk about that in a later slide. We've got managed security services. I don't recommend them unless it's a large corporation or you really want to spend the money on it, but you can partner with several different companies and they will come in and try and manage your data security for you. Virus scanners, you know, they only catch up with viruses that have already been discovered. So they don't catch the latest viruses. That's the problem with them. And then also you have to keep updating them. If your virus scanner is a week out of date, well, it's not giving you the kind of security you would need. So we all know they're a pain in the neck. They do help, although you have to keep up with them. And then updates to your computer. We all see that Microsoft wants to update constantly. How many of us have clicked delay the update or it's frustrated us. But the reality is that's Microsoft trying to stay on the cutting edge ahead of hackers. Next, we'll talk about physically secure electronic devices. So it's one thing that people can hack into your computer over a network. It's another thing that people can literally steal the computer, steal a phone. If that's a phone that you're using to store people's personally identifying information, well, then they can get that information and sell it. So PIN and password on phone devices. How many of us have a phone, or our staff have phones that are not PIN or password locked? That's a security risk, and if you see that, you should change that immediately. You know, your hard drive on your computer. How many years of you know, old scanned applications or scanned driver's licenses or stored information is on that computer? Do you still need it, or can you do a clean sweep? Just delete the hard drive, and then if something gets stolen or ransomwared, you have nothing to worry about. So doing a regular check of what you have actually stored on the computer can save you a lot of pain. And just to talk about just to jump back to ransomware, if you have deleted the hard drive and if you've uploaded things to the cloud and your computer gets ransomed, well, there's nothing on there. So you can tell them, okay, I'll do a wipe. I'll wipe the hard drive, I'll take it to a computer shop, wipe it, and they've got nothing from you. So you're safe. Physical security plan, making sure that if you're leaving your office, you lock devices away. And this is just kind of a common sense tip that I wanted to put in here with data security. So a huge, you know, it's very easy for hackers to hack into you if you've got a weak password. And so if they've logged into, if they've somehow gotten a hold of your password through some website that you logged into, or let's say that you did fall for a phishing attack, which will happen from time to time, you put in your password where you shouldn't have and realized it a little bit too late. Well, if you use the same password everywhere, now you've got a huge hassle on your hands, because we've got to be prepared. If we do fall for the phishing attack, it'll happen to the best of us. So if you've got strong passwords and you're not using the same password everywhere, as much as a hassle as that is, they will not be able to do that. So make a company password policy. Keep your password secret. Do not email your passwords. So don't tell anyone. So when I say email your passwords, how many of us in the last month or two have emailed someone a password or asked for it to be emailed to us? We all do it because it's convenience. But the reality is your email inbox is one of the first places a hacker can get into. And if you've got passwords to other services emailed to you in there, then you're at a massive disadvantage. So I would recommend pick strong passwords, have different passwords for every website. Don't tell anyone your passwords, and don't write it down on your desk as well. I mean, I think that's a pretty obvious one. At this stage, you know, people ask, well, what am I supposed to do then? You know, how am I supposed to remember all these different passwords? It would be okay to have a kind of a system, you know, where for each website you have different numbers and you have a mnemonic or a quick way to remember what those different numbers are. But to have the same password and a simple password for all your websites is just asking for trouble. So here's another polling question. How is your password security? So if you guys can type into the comments, anybody who's listening, you can pull up the comments and type in. And I'm just curious to know, so we can all discuss it. Number one, I never email passwords. They're only stored in my head. Number two, I have sent and received passwords by email. 3, I have a spreadsheet with passwords on my computer. 4, I have them written down on paper. So if anyone there wants to comment on that, I would say that personally I have a spreadsheet on the cloud that's password protected on the cloud with my passwords on it, some of them.
I have a 3.
You have a 3?
I see I see a 3 coming in for one of from. I won't say which of our attendees. I'll keep that secret.
Well, Brian Downer is doing a great job. You know, I do keep a spreadsheet on the cloud for not for my financial information. I keep that separate, not for the really important things, but for, you know, things I consider of secondary importance. I have a spreadsheet on my Google Drive. Now, is it taking a risk? It's taking a little bit of a risk. It's behind 2 layers of security in that they would have to log into the drive. They would have to hack my Google Drive, in which case they would be into a lot of personal information. Nothing we can do is ever perfectly safe. You know, just in the same way that no security system in your home is perfectly safe against intruders. But to keep a spreadsheet on your computer, on your hard drive, if you do suffer a ransomware attack, they have access to that. And they look for things like that. One of the first things they look for when they hack into an email inbox or onto your hard drive via ransomware is they look for that file. So keeping it in the cloud is 1 degree extra of security. Keeping it in your head is the perfect degree of security. Let's go on to the next slide then. Okay, so what's a strong password? Letters, numbers, symbols. A lot of websites enforce this. Why do they enforce this? Well, there's a number of softwares out there which will allow brute force attacks. So, which is simply where they try to guess your password by doing it 100,000, 1,000,000 times. So they'll use their botnet to log in 1,000,000 times and try your password 1,000,000 different ways. That's why a lot of websites will now lock you out if you try too many times in a short period, but they have ways around that. They can hack the system to bypass that. So using letters, numbers, symbols, capital letters is a good way to stop a brute force attack from happening. Not guessable, so not guessable about you with personal information. Longer than 8 characters. Again, these are all methods to stop a brute force attack. And even though you type in your password 3 times, it locks you out. The companies are looking at the fact that hackers can circumvent that. And what if they do? They can have 1,000,000 computers trying 1,000,000,000 combinations, you know, per minute. And in that case, you'd want to have a pretty strong password. So here's an example given: risky elephant 414 exclamation. You know, if you come up with some combination of adjective and noun that's funny in your head, and a number that you'll remember, and always put an exclamation at the end or something at the start. You want to change it regularly. So change it, you know, they want you to change it as often as you can, but, you know, maybe once a year you get a chance to go in and change it, you can. And then 2-factor authentication is obviously a huge step forward in terms of security. That's where you give them your phone number, and if they want to change your password, they will text you a code, or if you want to log in, they'll text you a code, and that lasts about a month. It's a bit more of a hassle, but it definitely adds security. Clark, how are we doing for time here? We're okay for time.
I think we're okay. We're at 3:44. You've got 16 minutes.
Okay. So most hacks start in the inbox. I mentioned this. So you want to develop an email policy. That's my laughing smiley face emoji at email passwords. Don't do it. Train your staff to be observant. Email addresses can be spoofed. So if someone emails asking for a username and password, make a habit of saying no. When in doubt, don't click and don't reply. And here's a big one: is don't delete spam, because most web mails have a mark it as spam feature. And what this will do is actually help protect you from future spam. If you delete it, it just disappears. If you mark it as spam, you're less likely to be targeted by phishing and by spam in the future. So try to find that feature and use it more often. Keep your software up to date. I mentioned that. And if you can see this picture, it shows a browser with 1,000,000 different extension bars on it. Each one of those represents a vulnerability for your computer. Basically, the hackers could have access to anything they want on your computer. So if you notice a new browser extension bar on your computer, it's time to get the viruses removed, and it's time to worry about a possible data theft having happened. So making a written policy, if anyone wants to contact me offline, I can give them information on how to go about doing that. Training your staff about the different types of hacks. Making a list of approved software programs is a good step. Anything that's not part of that list, anything that sneaks on, no matter how important the name of the program is, it gets deleted. And then sweeping the computers on a regular basis. Go to the application list, see what's on there. If it's not on the approved software lists, it gets deleted. Creating a cyber attack defense plan means how do you respond to being discovered you've been hacked? You should prepare for success, as the saying goes, but plan for failure. So let's see how you'd know that you've been hacked. So here are the nine of the easiest sides. So most hacks take minutes to do, but it won't be discovered for weeks. In over 80% of cases, victims didn't find the breach for weeks or more. That's a Verizon study in 2016. So a lot of people will never know they've been breached. If you get ransom messages, that's an obvious one. Fake antivirus messages means training your staff to know what the approved software is. If Avast is your approved software, then you see another virus program and you didn't, that's not Avast, then you know you've been you've been hacked. Unwanted browser toolbars, as we just looked at. If you're typing in one thing, say Google, and you're being redirected somewhere else, that means that you've been hacked. Frequent random pop-ups should not be happening. If they're happening, you've been hacked. If your password isn't working, all of a sudden, your password's been changed. I've seen this a lot as well. Unexpected software installs. If something's on the computer and it's not part of the approved software, then you have a virus. The mouse moves on its own and click things. It's a pretty clear sign. It's not a ghost, it's a hack. And then your online account has money missing. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. So here's an outline of the response plan. Secure your operations. So first thing, stop further data theft. Physically secure the data. Unplug it from the network if you have to. Unplug the computer, disconnect the Wi-Fi, and that stops further data theft. Get legal advice. You know, I have to put this in here. There's different state and federal reporting requirements. There's different state reporting requirements depending on what state you're in. So you might want to, I'm sure you'd want to get legal advice on what that is at the moment, because it's a moving target right now. NAA is working with, with Congress and the Senate to try and get some bills passed that will give us protection and let us know exactly what we have to do in these cases. But right now you might want to get legal advice. Interview the people who discovered the breach, take some notes, make sure you understand when they first noticed any problems, get the information when it's fresh in their mind. Don't destroy any evidence. So we might want to go ahead and delete it and start working on it, but you might want to keep that data for an investigation so that you can find out when it started, how severe it was. So kind of leave the crime scene for now. Notify appropriate parties. Different states have different requirements. It's hard for me to tell you. There is some information at the end of this about who you can notify. NAA is working to unify this to make it simpler. And then report the breach. You've got the Department of Justice, Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section, and your state reporting agency. So most states have a reporting agency, and in most cases, you'll have to report to both of those departments. Then you would have to, most states require you to send a data theft notice to residents. This is a list of the different information. We won't go through these particular things, but if you want this, then these slides are available and a recording of this is available, and we'll send it to you at the end. Okay, the key takeaways. The reality is it's simple, everyday solutions are the key to your data security. We're talking about passwords and emails, being aware of the common scams and training your staff to be aware of them. Don't keep restricted data where you can lose it. Watch for signs of hacking. Catch it quickly. Have a written policy and response plan. Those are the, it's not paying a data security company to use a lot of fancy words to do something. It's really something you can start doing every day in your offices right now. Okay, and so that brings the presentation part to a close. I am more than happy to field some questions. If anybody has any questions for me, now's the time. Please type them in.
I see that Tom McKeon has a question. He asks, do you recommend not turning off computers?
I guess he means turning them off when you leave in the evening. I think that if your computer's been infected, then you might want to turn it off, and you know that it's been affected. But if you've left for the evening, and as far as you know, you haven't seen any signs of a hack, and it's normal business as usual, I don't think turning off your computer does anything, because viruses get in through your user interactions. So the key thing to know there is it's very rare that there's a passive virus that gets in by itself without a user interaction. I mean, it's almost unheard of. So when they get in, it's through user interaction, and when they spread, it's instantaneous. If you have a network of computers and someone clicks on, something, they get scared and they click on something they shouldn't, and it downloads something and runs something on their computer, the whole network is almost, is going to be affected almost immediately. Or practically, it's going to send out its emails or whatever method it has of spreading itself. So turning the computers off won't really stop that from happening. So no, I don't think that affects anything.
Mark, I have a question from Brian Downer. He asks, is there anywhere we can report phishing emails to? I seem to get a couple a week, or is it futile?
So good question. If the phishing email is a generic phishing email, then it's pretty futile, because these things are being emailed out and they're hundreds of thousands, and there are attempts to put a stop to these things, but it's hard because a lot of times the phishing emails are coming from computers that have been hijacked anyway, so it's very hard to trace back. What you can do in those cases, the best thing to do is to click on the report spam on your web mail, because that will go into a central database of filtering that your webmail provider has, and that will prevent you from getting future ones, and they do have investigations going on. So if you click report spam, that's the best way to help others. It's the best way to help everyone be protected from phishing. Now, if the phishing email has personal information that you feel may have been targeted at you, then yes, there is the department I mentioned in the previous slide. The department, it's got a long name, I keep forgetting. But if we can go back, Clark, I'll just point out that slide. Back I think 2 slides. One more there. So if you contact the Department of Justice computer, it was then the other one, Clark. Thank you. Department of Justice Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section. If you put that into Google, you'll get a website where you can report these things. If it's been a phishing email that you feel was targeted directly at you, then reporting it to them is reporting it to the FBI Computer Crimes Department, and you will, they will add it to their list. I don't know what kind of action they'll take, but you will be doing something. Because if it's been personally targeted at you, you should raise your awareness of what's going on, because there might have been someone who's actually recognized who you are personally and is trying to find different ways to get into your accounts.
I noticed that Wilma had used the raise your hand tool. Wilma, I'd encourage you to use the Q&A box. Find the Q&A icon and click on that, and you can type us a question and we're able to respond to you. There she goes.
Yeah, and so if anybody wants these slides, Clark, where are we going to be providing these slides? On the NAA website? When they log in, they can get access to these slides?
So we're going to do 2 things, Mark. We'll make the recording available to folks through a link through a follow-up email, and we can also post a copy of the slide deck and link to that. And Jen and I can work together on the back end here to craft a follow-up email, and we'll get those resources out.
Great, yeah, because there's some, it's fairly dense with information at certain parts. I didn't delve into the data theft notice to residents, but that information is there if anybody wants to access it. Also, my phone number is on here, and if anybody had any questions, specific to them or concerns, please feel free to give me a call on the phone, or send me an email if you prefer. I'm more than happy to answer those questions. This is what I do. It's something I'm very personally interested in, and I'd be more than happy to help.
Sounds good. It looks like we have no more questions, if that's correct. If you do have a question, quickly get it out to us. Otherwise, I'm going to say on behalf of the National Apartment Association and the Independent Rental Owners Committee, thank you so much to Mark O'Clery for sharing all that intense information for us. Note, folks, do not keep your money in your mattress. Put your money
if the
in
wallet inspector asks you for your wallet, don't give it to them.
So put your money in the bank and your information in the cloud. Thanks so much, Mark. That was quite a lot. I appreciated that you sort of broke things down into things that I, as a layman, can understand really easily. And I think that you've really helped us sort of raise awareness for all those little sneaky ways that people try to intrude on your digital world. So thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, everyone who joined.
Folks who are in attendance, look for a follow-up email from the National Apartment Association in about a day or two, and we'll get you the collateral from today's gathering. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.